So our focus today is on making connections to STEM careers, in particular to careers that can engage youth in their outdoor environment wherever they live. So presenting with me today is Zach Schaefer, our intern with Click to Science, who also runs a nature club at an after-school program in our community. And my colleague Sandra Frericks. I will let her talk a little bit about herself as she talks about some ideas for celebrating Earth Day in out-of-school time.
Thanks, Melissa. So I love Earth Day, and this is actually our 46th annual Earth Day celebration in the U.S., so it's kind of exciting. We're getting close to that 50 years of Earth Day. And I visited the earthday.org website to come up with some ideas that might be things that you could do in your program for Earth Day. These are all things that are not too hard to set up that the youth in your program might enjoy. Things like planting a tree. Of course, you need permission to do that, but there might be, there are some great resources through the Earth Day site to get trees without much cost. Doing a recycling drive is even easier. Collecting recyclables in your community from your families and helping the students learn how to recycle that. Picking up trash in your neighborhood or in a local park, easy things to do. There's also resources in your community, people you can invite in to talk about the local environment or that work in your community and in the environment. All of these are things that you could add to your program even on short notice to celebrate Earth Day, or to use it anytime during the year to help involve kids in the environment and getting them outdoors. I should introduce myself so that you're familiar with the voice. I'll be coming on throughout the webinar. My name is Sandra Frericks. I'm a science education specialist here with the Click to Science team, and I'm excited to have you with us today. Welcome to the webinar, and let's learn how to make some great connections today.
Thanks, Sandra. So our primary goal today is to provide you with ideas and resources about how you can get the youth in your program outdoors and use outdoor experiences to help them connect to STEM careers. In our March webinar, which was just a couple weeks ago, we talked about inspiring youth to construct a STEM identity. And some of you noticed that scientists who work outdoors or do field research were not well represented. So we want to explore why it is important to get youth outdoors and help them understand the many STEM careers that are not housed in a lab.
Hi, I'm Zach. I am the intern slash person that runs some nature programs here in the community. In this picture here, you can see one of the kids that I've had the privilege to teach in one of my 6-week nature programs. You know, it looks as if the child here is playing in the mud, and in fact, she is playing in the mud, but I swear it's more than that. The activity of the day was to build beaver dams. So I got some potting soil and dumped it on the ground and poured water all over it and made mud. And we used plastic tubs to build these dams in, and I said to the kids, you know, go around and find anything on the ground that you can use to make a dam. And the goal was to make a dam that wouldn't leak, you know, when it rained or, you know, when I put water in one of the tubs. You know, doing this activity, I had really never seen the kids more engaged, a more engaged group of students, because, I mean, what kid doesn't like to play in the mud, right? They were all working together like they'd known each other for years, and it was all too easy for these kids to connect to what it meant to be a beaver, because to them, being a beaver was, you know, playing in the mud. Now, we all know beavers don't necessarily just, you know, play in the mud, that they use it for a means of survival, but it's a start. You know, it starts the ball rolling. It creates this sense of novelty, which is what I believe to be one of the steps in this cycle that may lead to deeper understanding. And from novelty, you gain a sense of attention and awareness that allows the kids to further immerse themselves into what it actually means to be a beaver, to gain actual knowledge. And I still have kids that come up to me today from 2 years ago that will give me random facts or tell me how much they enjoyed a certain activity or a piece of activity or something that they remembered from being outside. The stuff sticks, and I thought a long time about maybe why it sticks, and did a lot of watching my students And I guess what I'm going to say next, it may seem rather intuitive, but for me, I really had to experience this firsthand to really understand the gravity of it. But kids, they're very pragmatic, and they learn by touching and doing and feeling and experiencing, and they communicate with others by how we present ourselves and how others present themselves and what others do. I had a great example is I had one kid, who wasn't keeping his hands to himself. So I went over and I put my hand on his shoulder and I leaned down and said, Billy, we're going to call him Billy in this example. I said, Billy, you need to keep your hands to yourself. And he looked back up to me and said, well, you're not keeping your hands to yourself, referring to the fact that I indeed did have my hand on his shoulder. So I guess the idea here is to not downplay this, rather intuitive sense that the kids have, not only understanding what we're doing, but being in a certain place, because the outdoors, it becomes this place that they can touch, they can exist in. It becomes a way in which their minds are framed. It's not square and white. It's this amalgam of what seems to have no structure, but what may actually have structure outside. And it doesn't matter what place you're in. I work in a place that is off the side of the sidewalk with a little bit of grass and maybe one or two trees, and that's it. But it's it's being out there. As you take them back there to the same place, their attention widens. The novelty it comes, and again and more is understood. In the long term, passions can develop. An ethic. A sense that they belong to the outdoors. Those things can develop, and ultimately students with great character. Being outside is much more than just twigs and leaves on the grounds, because those twigs and leaves, they respire just like you and I do. They breathe, and they exist, and you can help students to see this and not just learn science, but to have a passion for knowledge in general. I mean, that's why we teach, because we do have a passion for knowledge in general. Now, so far what I've said, it sounds like a real fairy tale story, and as I've taught, and as I'm sure all of you know, it's not. But it is, and it's important to remember that some of these things, the passion, the ethic, the students with character, those are long-term goals, and you may never actually see those things. But not to say that you can't see, the sparks that may be this ultimate fire in the end. You can begin to see the look in their eyes. It's almost as if we also have to widen our attention along with them. We have to gain an intuitive sense about us as well to be able to communicate with them, because they're little gorillas. That's how they learn. So that's one thing we got to remember, that we may not see all these effects right away. And it's also important to remember that doing stuff outside it's contingent on your students. And don't get me wrong, the outdoors it's good for everyone. If not for knowledge and understanding and things like that. Physiologically, as we step outside, it's been proven that endorphins release, and we are soothed to a certain extent, right? But a good example is I have a student right now in one of my clubs who's in a bad situation outside of school and acts out because of it. And every week it seems like it's a constant battle between the two of us. But he's still there every week. He's still with a group. He's still in that area outside, and it may take me some time to find a means of communication. But once I do, that novelty, that attention, those things can start nudging their way in. And it may be a point where I may not be able to communicate with him in the short time that I have. I have 6 weeks, an hour each week. It might not be feasible in the amount of time. But this is okay as well. It's important to try. It is important for them to be out there, because, like I said, they are pragmatic. It seems to me, as I've watched them, that they may really understand the world and outside better than any of us adults. Like I said, it's like they can feel it. You can't really explain it. It just is, and you can see it in those little sparks of the fire I was talking about. So I guess all in all, I just want you to remember that this is all good. The outdoors is good. It may breathe life and passion to your students, but it's equally important to remember that there's going to be hurdles and that this isn't going to be perfect. But this is okay, because immersing your students into anything that is good, anything that may breathe life and passion into your students is always going to be good. It's always going to be worth it. And don't worry about the kids getting dirty and tracking mud into your school and, that's, mud will wash out of the carpet. It'll vacuum. It'll wash off your chairs. And even if you gotta do a little work so that the janitors aren't PO'd that they gotta clean up after these kids, it's fine. And the kids are gonna dry after they come in, and after they've been out in the rain, and their colds will subside and they'll be fine. But the laughter, the smiles, those sparks that I was talking about, those things don't wash off. They really stick, and those kids are going to come back up to you in 2 years and be like, hey, remember when we did this? And that, that's what we need as teachers, because we're not in it for the glory. We're in it to serve and to spread knowledge and understanding. When you find a passion for something like teaching and knowledge, things change from what should be done to spread that passion to what must be done to spread that passion, to ensure that it exists and it continues. So whether you take your kids outside this week or never, you got to do something, because if you don't do something, what I say here today, they're just words. All this great stuff and great knowledge, it's just words on a page. It's just a good idea with nothing to show for it. So if you do nothing else, just keep spreading what you're passionate about, this knowledge, understanding, and that passion will continue. It's all good.
Great. Thanks, Zach, for sharing your insights from what you've observed as you lead your nature club. We are now going to watch a video from Click to Science, and this is a group of youth exploring their local environment. So this video was really created to highlight strategies for actively engaging youth in learning, but I want you to look for possible career connections in their experiences outside. So you'll probably notice the staff don't really mention careers. That's because they're not focused on careers in this particular video. But we want you to be looking for ways to connect to careers in this environment. So as you watch the video, we just want you to think about kind of some of the careers that you could make connections to if you were taking youth to a location such as this and they were getting an experience like this, and just generate some ideas about how those career connections could look, or different questions that you could ask them to get that and to connect that to careers.
So this spring that we're going to go in actually feeds all of this water that you're seeing back behind us. So the entire wetlands comes from this underground spring down here.
Effective strategies to help youth embrace active STEM learning include allowing youth to get actively involved with the activity, to get messy. In this video, frontline staff use a local spring to allow youth to engage with their environment. Frontline staff use questions and comments from youth to guide their learning. Watch as they provide youth hands-on opportunities to explore.
Does anybody know where the water comes from in a spring?
Underground.
Underground, very good. So a good way to think of it is that spring water springs up out of the ground. Now a cool thing about a spring, does anybody know what temperature it usually stays at? Any guesses?
50 degrees.
50 degrees, very good. So I actually have some thermometers. We're going to be testing the water temperature out and be looking for living things. All of these things are different animals that we could find in the water, but it has some different areas. Now, these animals that are right in the middle, these animals are the ones that you're going to find in the spring because the water is not moving. Do you think we're going to find animals like this in moving water? No. No. So where do you think we might find in moving water? What do you think? Some fish. So we're going to be looking at animals that might live under rocks because they need something to hold on to as the water's going down. We might find some frog eggs, some fish eggs. Check the temperature, my friends with thermometers. Check and see if it's really 50. 60? It's a little off. Do you see the living animals?
Oh yeah, is that a millipede or something?
Kind of. They're water bugs. So millipedes don't really live under the water. Let's look at our rock and see what we can find. So look really closely. Look at your rock too. Look really closely. You see where it kind of looks like jelly right here? Kind of like hair gel? Yeah. That's kind of like eggs. So we found some eggs in here. They might be frog eggs. It could be fish eggs. But they're attached to the rocks. Ooh. You see how these guys are kind of attached to the rock? They can't really float away. So these are what you're going to find mostly over here in this part of the spring.
So we want to hear from you in the chat box. If you could share what careers that you could help youth connect to in an experience like this, as well as how could you help them understand, what working as an environmental scientist would be like. And then how to make career connections for those younger students. So please share your ideas in the chat box. I'm going to mute my microphone to give you time to think without me talking. So share those ideas of the career connections you could make in this experience. So we've got a few ideas coming in. I encourage you to share your ideas with the group. That's how some of the best learning during these webinars takes place, is we're learning from not only us as the Collective Science staff, but also your peers. And so we've got a game and parks professional, biologist, fish and wildlife, researcher, or technologist that measures water quality. So there are many different careers that can be connected to the outdoors and help youth think of themselves as scientists. If they're enjoying this activity, looking under rocks, playing around in the water, maybe that's a career for them. And they didn't think about that before because their idea of a scientist or a researcher is just someone in a lab wearing a lab coat doing crazy experiments. So my next question for you that I want to hear from everyone on is, how do we connect younger students to careers? So just share your ideas of how you could get younger students connected to these careers through an experience like this. Thanks, Sandra. So to summarize, I think connecting younger students to careers is just as important as helping youth prepare for college or in high school talking about what they want to do. Jill had an excellent idea to touch and feel the dirt, to collect bugs, to really get their hands dirty and experience what that career might look like. Sandra shared that personal story about people working in museums and having no idea that there were actually people who worked there. And then I shared, just like we saw in the video, giving them the tools of the scientist or the researcher. They may find that they really have a connection to using that particular tool, and that may become the career that they want to pursue. So there's a lot of different ways youth connect to careers, and we just need to be open to all of those different ways and encourage them to experience what that career might be like. So I'm going to hand it over to Zach, who's going to share a little bit more about some careers.
Cool. So as those of us who facilitate and who run out-of-school programs, we're not experts in making connections to careers, so it's really helpful that there are a lot of resources on the internet that we can find and we can use. You can almost Google anything and it'll come up, right? The most important thing, though, to help everyone in your program to understand that these connections to careers, that is very important. It's not our role now to be guidance counselors, but it is our role to, give them a wider perspective, to spread that novelty and to spread that attention, and to encourage them to continue to explore and find what they're passionate about.
So while we want you to get outside and we want youth to be outside exploring and learning about different careers, we know that not all career connections will be made outdoors. That's just not possible in all of our after-school programs. So here we see some ideas about making connections to careers that take you outdoors without having to physically go outside. And we're going to talk about after the video, so be prepared to share in the chat pod the career connections that you see in this video, how the staff in the video helped youth experience what it would be like to be a soil scientist, and other outdoor experiences that you could bring into this activity, or other ideas that you have about how you could facilitate this and make connections to STEM careers. So be prepared to share with your peers. We'll go ahead and start the video.
We're about to start our lesson on soil science. And before we can even start, we need to ask ourselves an important question. What's soil?
In this activity, youth are introduced to the career of a soil scientist.
So to be a soil scientist, okay, there are many different kinds of soil scientists, but to do the kind of work that I do, it helps to be curious.
They hear from a soil scientist about her daily work and then get an opportunity to practice being a soil scientist as they test pH levels.
In your pH sheet, the same one I have here, you notice that it goes from the color of red to the color of yellow. Each of the pHs are different, and you're going to determine is the liquid either acidic, neutral, or basic.
Yeah, it's turning green.
What's inside this cup?
Cabbage juice
And
lemon juice.
lemon juice inside the cabbage juice. And what color did it turn?
Dark pink.
So this lemon juice is what? Acidic. So can you put in your on your graph, it's what color? Dark pink. Put dark pink.
Youth experiment with changing the pH levels of soil and decide which types of plants grow best in each soil.
What color? What color? What color? What color? What color?
Getting blue.
Ooh, so it must be what?
Basic.
Basic. Do you get that? Our farmer wants to plant has all soil A, and soil A is what kind of soil?
Soil A is neutral.
Neutral. What are some of the things that he or she can plant?
What flower you can plant?
Yes.
Is spinach and grass.
Spinach and grass work best in neutral soil.
So while we're watching the video, Sandra had typed some questions into the chat box, so we just want you to share now the career connections you saw in the video and how the staff helped youth experience being a soil scientist. So please share those career connections and how you felt that the staff helped youth experience that career. Jill shared a really great idea for another way to connect this to careers and connect this with the youth in the program. So they showed, person who does this for a living in addition to connecting it to a farmer. Well, if you're planting a garden for the summer camp, you could test the soil that you have in the area that you're going to garden and not only connect it to a career, but also to their own knowledge and experiences of creating that garden. So that's a great idea. Great idea, Jill. Thank you for sharing that. Sandra shared that meeting the scientists virtually before they did the activity helped build the connection to the real work of ecologists. And Zach pointed out the enthusiasm of how the staff presented the information was important as well. So yes, digging up their own soil and testing it would have been a great connection to the outdoors. But, in that space, there may not have been soil to test, or there may not have been the opportunity to go outside. So, making do with what you have and trying to connect it in the ways that the staff person did was still very successful, I think. So Sandra asked in the chat pod, how could you include other outdoor connections here? We've got a garden as one way. Does anyone else have any ideas that they can share? Louise shared the soil scientists can also be related to astronauts by finding life on Mars. And if you've seen The Martian, that's Matt Damon's character is a plant. He's either a plant or a soil scientist. I can't remember exactly what, but he is a scientist, and he figures out how to survive on Mars through his knowledge of plants and or soils and what they need to survive. So awesome connection and something that youth would be really excited about. I could see if you were talking about going to Mars and figuring out what soil you needed to grow what kind of plants. So we had some other notes mentioned here, like a garden center, a botanical garden to visit after this experiment to get outdoors and connect to ideas. Discover how plants grow within the soil, so planting some plants and seeing that. As well as, if you are going to go to Mars, you need people building rockets and machines and scientists to test those results. So I had thought of an idea that, depending on your location and where you are, you could go for just a walk around the neighborhood in where your program is located, and see if you can identify different types of soils just in the environment around you, just even by sight or feeling them, to see if it's is it gravel, is it silt, is it more like clay, and maybe taking some samples back with you to test in your program to see what is in the environment around you. So there's lots of different ways to get outdoors and bring those experiences into this activity with youth. So I appreciate it, people sharing some outside the box ideas. Those are great. So now we need everyone's participation because we are going to do an activity from the Click to Science resource called Name That STEM Career. So that's in the Files to Download pod in the bottom right of the screen. So if you'd like to download that, you can do so now, or you can do it at the end of the webinar. We're going to use visuals and products to develop our skills in helping youth make connections to STEM careers. So for the webinar, we've used images, but in a staff meeting, you could use web images like we have, advertisements, and everyday items to help staff expand their thinking about careers. So here are some images that represent outdoor STEM careers. You could use pictures, short videos, posters, college information, or advertisements. But let's think about how you might discuss this set of visuals with your staff or with youth. Remember, we also want to help you see themselves in these images. So in the chat pod, I want you all to share presented in these images. So what is this person doing in the image? What job are they doing? What are they physically doing? How did they learn those skills to do the job? And what should we look for to help you see themselves in the visuals we provide? So looking at these visuals, what are some things that you notice that might either help youth see themselves in the visuals, or what are other ways that we could help you see themselves in these visuals? So I'll give you just a couple minutes to jot down your ideas. So we want to know what jobs you see represented in the images, what is their work, how did they learn the skills to do these jobs, and then we're going to think a little bit about how to help you see themselves in the visuals we provide. So while people are finishing up typing, looks like some of the careers that people saw represented in these images were a marine biologist, archaeologist, game and parks person, a water quality specialist. They went to school, had internships or training. We've got a provisional wild animal keepers for mammals. I actually saw the person in the middle with the shovel. I thought that could have been a construction worker, a surveyor, and maybe they learned that on the job or they completed a technical program. We've got a climate change scientist, marine biologists. Juan noted all of them are working with the environment. So these are great careers that we can connect youth to. So, you may not think of a zookeeper as being a STEM career, but there's a lot of STEM involved in that. The game and parks professionals, there's a lot of STEM involved in those careers. And so, one thing we want to look for to help you see themselves in the visuals we provide is that they are represented. So if you notice, there are a lot of females in these images, because we do know that women are underrepresented in the STEM fields. And so you just need to make sure that the visuals that you're using are representative of the group of people that you're working with. So you want to make sure that there's a wide variety of images that you're looking for, and that you're not just showing all of one gender or one ethnicity of people. So Sandra's asking, what did she miss with putting these visuals together? Do you notice that there is a group of people, or some youth may not see themselves represented very well in these images? So there are no African Americans in the images. And the one is really dark, so you can't really tell anything about those people. We don't see any Native Americans. So there are not a lot of ethnicities besides Caucasians represented in these images. So that would be something that when you're presenting this to a group of youth, you want to make sure that you would have, okay, we have, these are the people that are doing this career, that you have a wide variety of visuals showing a wide representation of genders and ethnicities. So let's go on to our round 2. We want to think about some of the products that we use every day. So if we were together in one room, we would bring in some physical objects we could look at to maybe taste, touch, smell. Strawberries and honey would be delicious right now. But since we are on a webinar, we have to rely on images. So based on these images that you see here, what jobs would you associate with these products? And what needs to be done to produce a product like energy efficient light bulbs, hemp clothing, or strawberries? And how do these products connect to the outdoor STEM careers that we've been talking about? So once again, in the chat box, I want you to look at all of these images that are on the screen of different products that are related to the outdoors and share the jobs that you associate with these products, what needs to be done to produce a product that's pictured in these visuals, as well as how do these products connect to the outdoor STEM careers that we've been talking about. So if you can make a connection to some of the careers that you saw in the earlier slides or that we've discussed as watching part of the video, make that connection now. We had talked about earlier, or some new careers that you can think of that these visuals bring to mind. Luis mentioned migrant workers are represented here, and I think that's an excellent point, that they do many of the agriculture jobs for us here in the United States, and that's something to mention, is that, you know, who's working on these farms. So great point. We've got nature gives us everything to survive: food, energy, clothing, etc. So that's an important point to make as well, that if you are looking for an outdoor STEM career, that, you know, it's tied to nature, and that this is giving us all of these different products that we need to survive. Sandra noted renewable energy, not just the science and engineering side, but also for lawyers and communicators. So there are some products that are related to you know, renewable energy, and also some products about energy efficiency. So that's a big field at this point. And I noted that the hemp clothing, you know, you need a farmer to grow the hemp, a designer to design the product, a manufacturer to turn the hemp into a product, and retailers and salespeople to sell those products. So just even thinking about how something would go from the plant source to the final product, there are so many careers involved in that. And youth may not think about that when they see a product. They may not connect that, you know, there are all of these people involved in the things that we use every day. So it's a great way, you know, we're using this with want to make these connections in our programs for youth as well. So this activity is really designed to help our staff think about all the different STEM careers that can connect to all of these different products, so that they can then in turn make those connections for youth. So do you think of other careers that we haven't included? Does anything else come to mind? And if you have any other ideas, please share those in the chat box. So I don't see anyone typing, so I'm going to go ahead and move on. If you do have ideas, please share those in the chat box. So there are a lot of different ways to help your staff and the youth in your program connect to role models in STEM careers. And one way is to find people in your community and ask them to talk with the youth or staff in your program, visit the program, connect virtually with your program, or help you make connections to their work. So sometimes it's relatively easy to find these individuals and to ask them to come to your program, and they're more than willing. Other times it's just not real feasible to have someone come in. So there are also some online resources that you can use. SciGirls is one that we like because they connect hands-on activities to the work of scientists, and the videos are really fun and engaging. So we've got in the web resources pod, we've got a few different links. We've got a link to Earth Day, we've got a link to the SciGirls video that there's a screenshot of on the screen, as well as, you know, some careers in ecology and an environmental scientist career. So do you have any other online resources that you use for finding STEM role models? And if you do, could you share those in the chat pod with us so that we can add them to our web resources pod, and then other individuals can use those to make connections as well. So some ideas that we had were to use professional organizations like the Society for Women Engineers to help you connect with local role models, or set up virtual visits with scientists at NASA. Does anyone else have any links or resources that they have used to virtually connect youth in their programs to STEM role models? Another idea that we had come up with is to use your local community colleges or universities to connect youth to STEM role models. So they may not, be able to come visit you, or they may be able to set up like a field trip for your group to come and visit them. But a lot of times I think our instructors at local community colleges and at our universities are willing to Skype with youth and talk about their research and what they're doing, and that may be a really great time to connect them to some STEM role models. So both Boy and Girl Scouts in the area for the summer camp program, and so that gets kids engaged for scouting as well. So that's a good connection. And that may also connect them to other adults who have a STEM career. So don't forget about connecting youth to parents of some of the other youth in your programs who might have a STEM career. If they talk about their dad being an electrician or an engineer, that's a great career connection that I'm sure that parent would be more than willing to come in and talk to your youth about what it took for them to get into the career. So thanks for sharing those great ideas. So as we finish up today, I want to remind you that Click to Science PD is designed specifically to support out-of-school programs in improving program quality, staff satisfaction, and the positive impact they have on youth by providing resources for staff development. So our goal is to support you in providing the best quality experience for the youth in your program, and we use STEM as a tool to do that, but it is only a tool. We do want to encourage you to use these resources in your own program. That is why you can download Name That STEM Career. And I'd love to have you try this in your own program and let me know what happens. So do you think that experiences such as what you've experienced today in the webinar would make a difference for your staff and your youth? That it would help them more clearly think about the connections that they can make to STEM careers, and also help the youth in your programs make more clear connections to, what they could do when they grow up and the different STEM careers that they may not even know about.
So as you're leading this in your program, that's really, we'd love to have you actually use these resources, and that's why we have them there for you to download. And remember, they're really designed to help staff build their comfort in using these skills and making connections. So the Name That STEM Career is pretty simple. You share some images, you share some products, you share some role models, and as you're doing it locally, you can really accentuate the resources in your community and how those will connect to your program. So we really want to encourage you to use these resources, and as you use them, let us know how they're working for you. If they're not working, we want to know that too. And we want you to be able to learn together with your colleagues or with the staff that you supervise if you're a site director or a program leader. I also want to add there's one more file that I added to the downloads that I forgot to include when I first set up the webinar, and that's a series of STEM adventures, and this is some of the curriculum that Zach developed as part of his internship on getting youth in after-school programs outdoors and combining the STEM and the career connections with outdoor education experiences for youth. So if you are interested in that, you can download that file. If it doesn't work because I zipped it, let me know, email us afterwards, and we will get that directly to you.
All right, so we just want to thank you all for participating, for being here today. Without you guys, all this stuff, like I said before, would just be, words on a page, would just be some webinar out there. So we do really appreciate you guys participating. We'll be posting this recording of this webinar on the website so that you can share it with your colleagues, and we encourage you to do so.